Is Karla Gabriela de la Fuente. I was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. So it's still in the 956 area near Laredo. My dad is from Diaz Ordaz, and my mom's from Reynosa, and they're both like border towns with the valley. I started off as an English teacher, and then I've now transitioned to an art history teacher. So apart from that, I'm also doing my MFA right now with UTRGV in studio art, and I'm getting a certificate in art history as well, Latin American art history. And I was selected to be part of Cultivarte's virtual artist in residency program, which is really exciting. In these last couple of months, what I've been doing is experimenting with natural dyes, from just like locally sourced things like berries from my backyard, things that are I guess native to my region, to the Rio Grande Valley, so like espinas and dirt, stuff like that. And also, like I said, natural dyes that I got from this awesome company that kind of resources them in a very, I guess, friendly way. So throughout this whole process, I've been experimenting, like I said, the dyeing. So like the all the steps of dyeing. So I know like whenever I make the paper, it may seem so you have to like pretty much just like shred the paper, get it wet,
Mm.
make pulp like masa. Like I know that you're familiar with it, like with your masks. And then from there, I dye it like four separate times. I'm sorry, I it takes four baths, cut or
Hmm.
cooks. So with different chemicals, and then I add the different dyes, and then at the end I have the dough, la masa, and from there I add it in water and I sift it, and I get papers.
That's
And
cool.
thank you. Yeah. So the whole thing started whenever one of my friends a couple of years ago, she gave me some papel mate, and I started making collages with it. So from there,
Hmm.
I know that a lot of people would ask me like, "Oh, did you make this?" I'm like, "No, it's handmade." I'm like, "Someone else made it," and they'd be like, "Oh, you should make your own paper." So it's just kind of something that it kind of fell into my lap, and I had one of my professors from the university that he also kind of experimented with paper making, so I kind of got into it, and that's what I've been focusing on: the pattern making, like stuff that follows the like the papel mate, kind of like this,
Hmm.
and then using positive and
Papel mate is what?
papel mates. It's like handmade paper, except that they make it out of like tree bark. So their process is different.
Oh,
Yeah. So what they do, they kind of like strip the trees, and then look, what is it called? Like like machaqueando, like with kind of think
uh-huh.
like the stone of a molcajete, but it's like in a square form.
Yeah.
So they kind of like tap
Hmm.
it and then make the paper. So this is like my Mexican American version.
My name is Juan Hernandez. I was born in Nuevo Laredo. I have all my relatives are in Nuevo Laredo and Laredo, like San Antonio. My parents are in Houston, so I'm very familiar with just this border culture, which is very different than Mexican culture from the South, or like it's a very in between cultures. Ni de aquí ni de allá, pero de aquí. My brother and sister were both born in Laredo, Texas. I was supposed to be born in Laredo, Texas, but I did not make it across the bridge. I literally started coming out. So that part of my life has been just a big inspiration about a lot of the artwork that I do. Just this pullback of Texas, Mexico, and just this like pulling and like what falls in between. So I moved to Indiana at the age of 9. I got my during high school. I got very into photography. So much so that I went to Indiana University to got my BFA in photography. After that, I moved back to Texas, to Houston. I don't know if you've done photography in school, but it's very expensive. It's very expensive, like from the dark rooms to digital to sending film off to be printed in Japan. It was very expensive, and it's something that I couldn't continue after school because I most of the equipment that I used was owned by Indiana University. So once you graduate, you learn how to do all these things on these devices, but once you graduate, you don't have access to them anymore. So you have to, if you want to continue to be an artist, you have to just absolutely stay inventive and creative and what the next steps are. I was trying to figure out what to do with my photography degree. I ended up working at Photo Fest International in Houston. They throw like big biannual photography exhibitions. I was the assistant director of literacy through photography, where we use photography to teach kids how to speak about their life. So we used a camera to help them as a guide. Like, okay, you don't know what to say at the top of your head, but like if you photograph your mom cooking, and then like, well, what was she cooking? Does she usually cook these meals for you? Do you like it when she like, like it? And all of a sudden the kids have a lot to say. And I learned a lot about that as well, from their perspective, because what do I want to say through the photographs I also take? There was this one powerful moment where we wanted to talk about hands, and I brought several pictures of hands doing different things. It could be holding an apple, it could be shaking someone else's hand, and I had a picture of some handcuffed hands. And I asked the kids, like, well, what do y'all think about this photo? What do you think is happening? So it was like exploring art through conversation. And all of a sudden, all these connections that these kids made, like, oh, that happened to my uncle last week. Oh, my mom, that happened to my mom. And all of a sudden, this conversation opened up about the justice system, like in a fourth grade class. So it was a very powerful moment, but it was also very important for those kids to be able to have that space through art, to be able to find their commonalities or how their life is affected by everything. And all of a sudden they saw themselves as peers instead of just classmates. And I took a lot of lessons from there that I apply to my own artwork still. Whenever I do photographs, whenever I make art, sculptures, what do I want to say? And I found that people are more responsive to your art if you say everything you want to say at once, and they can try to pick at it and try to figure out what they want, instead of you saying this is what this is and it's because of this and that. When you just let them try to decipher it themselves, and they might find commonalities with what I'm doing. I mean, there's been many times where people have told me, like, your art has opened up something in my mind that has happened to me, and that I was sad about, that I'm happy about. And it's good to hear, because that's the whole purpose of my art, besides wanting to make money. It's about helping people find their own voice. I'm not trying to give them a voice, but I want to be able to help them open up themselves too.
Very interesting, because I know that in one of my classes we had discussed Judy Chicago's work, and a lot of her work kind of ties in with education. So sometimes like some of her pieces, like it'll be the work, and then it'll like she'll give you like a paragraph or like some text, like, oh, okay, this is what this and this. Like you just said, that people kind of like find their own interpretation or kind of find themselves in your work.
Even if you were to say this is what it means and this is what it stands, people will always feel like, I don't see that. The whole thing is like everyone has their own idea of what art, and how they interpret it, and that's something that you just can't help. You're not going to be able to control the message that's out there, or how people interpret your art, because they're coming from a place where something has happened to them, or they've experienced something a certain way, and you can't change that in their mind, and that's okay. But the fact that you just let them think, well, that's not how it is, it's actually like this, well, my goal was still achieved. I still was able to unlock something in your mind. This after college moment where I had no idea how to move forward with the medium that I chose to do, I still wanted to do art, but I wanted to find a way that I could use art as more of a platform, photography more as a platform for something else. A lot of the photographs that I was taking. My senior show was based on Mexican telenovelas. So I did a lot of photography, like 4x5 photography of scenes, moments, feelings, um, emotions, anger, happiness. So I photographed all of these different people in certain ways. And what I liked most about the photography that I did was being able to capture a feeling, an emotion, um, a certain facial expression. And I guess I just focused in on that and just focused it on the face. And since at the moment I didn't really have a lot of available friends for photography, I decided to make my own faces. So it all started out with when I moved to Houston, I opened up a little shop that I would do pop-ups. I would go to like different bars or markets, and I would buy things from estate sales. I would buy things from Goodwill and things like that, and I would modify them. I would paint them. I would find like old beat up wooden masks, and I would like just repaint them, bring them back to life in my own ways and ideas. And I started collecting a lot of wooden masks from a lot of Mexican wooden masks, but also a lot from around the world. And what I found interesting was that these masks were, they had a purpose. They were meant for more of a, a ritual, something cultural, something from the past. They represented something from the past. And I mean, I'm not saying we're in the future, but we're in the future. And these masks no longer represent my idea of what life is, or what the rituals, what modern day rituals and culture is. So I wanted to make something that was modern for current feelings, current emotions of what's happening in this world. It could be all sorts of, there's so much happening in the world. And I feel like we don't really have masks to move to the future. We only have the masks from the past, but we don't have anything for the future. And masks were important then, and they're important now. Hopefully someone will like pick out a mask I made and like, oh, this is like from COVID time. This is an example of what I was talking about, of the moments. This is one I won't sell, but I'm pretty pleased about it. So, like in 2020, when we all started wearing masks, it became such a political thing as well for a lot of people. Like, you're either in it or you're not, and like, it was a mess. It was a mess. But I wanted to capture that moment of anxiety into a mask. So I make this hybrid looking animal that is more, he's more of like screaming like 6 feet, get away from me. So it's kind of like barking people away. And instead of headphones, I added this little devil and this little angel. But the devil, he's wearing a mask, pretending to be an angel. And the angel is wearing a devil mask, pretending to be a devil. So they're speaking into the ear with like, which is the rise of misinformation. So I wanted to be this like, what is the message? Where is this? What is the message that we're all receiving, and how does it reflect on our times? So, in the back, I wanted to cement, like I don't use newspaper, but I use the newspaper on the back for this one, just trying to capture, I don't know if you can read it, but it says like, the new normal, politicized, surging anger, toxic cops, Facebook outbreak. And these are all headlines that I got. And I put them in here just as a little time capsule. Yeah, but, and obviously the little COVID with a skull and some swords of like trying to fight the disease. And yeah, so these are the things that I'm talking about. Like, we need modern day things to represent what's happening now. Social media masks and filters, they're going to disappear. We may try to beautify our life with social media filters, social media, like anything that changes your face or appearance. um, it's gonna fade. It's not a permanent thing. I mean, unless you save all those videos and look back on them in the future. But there are these moments like the pandemic that happened that just really makes you cement what has happened. And it's also a reflective tool that I can look back and like, oh, remember that? That was crazy. um, a lot of them are also just these like different ideas that I like, this telenovela moments mixed in with real life. I have this one as well. That's one of my favorites. When I lived in LA, I would walk around the Hollywood Boulevard area, and I would see all these people like taking a little smoke break, taking off their Iron Man mask or their Mickey Mouse mask, like to have a smoke. And it was a very real moment where this like they took off their mask to be able to just take a little break for themselves, for this breather, this moment of reflection. And I wanted to capture that for for them, this for myself, but like in reflection of them, just this one moment of life. It's just like, just you're tired of smiling, you're tired of working, you just need to get away, but then you still have this like job that you have to do on top of it. So these are the little moments that I talk about whenever I want to create a moment, um, for the future to reflect on. Because the old masks aren't doing it anymore, and I feel like everyone needs a little bit of reflective tools for their house. A mirror is not enough.
Wow, I'm like super blown away right now. Like, I think that those are amazing. Like, I think it's so awesome that you did that with the newspapers. It's really cool.
I'm always trying to capture that one feeling. If I had, if I was still doing photographs, I will probably find the Mickey head to do this photograph. So I'm always thinking of like, how would this look as a person? So I used I I still do photography. I mean, you've seen my Instagram. Like, I very much still use those tools. But whenever I'm going to start on something new, I think of, who is this person? Who are they like? Would they actually do this? So I have to step into like characters, like a state of mind where it's not me as this person, or at least this idea of what I think this feeling is. Okay. So here's some photography work that I have done. This is from my graduating show in 2009. So I was really focused on these emotions, or lack of emotions as well. But like trying to capture this moment and try to build a character around these people. So everything that you see, like the middle photo, I bought her outfit. I went to Goodwill like by myself too. Maybe that's why it started getting really expensive as well. Because I was just buying wardrobe for everyone. Was I want you to look at the last one with the guy with the bear head. I've been very obsessed with this idea of capturing these hybrid and like animal hybrid beings. As you can see from here, like I still take a lot of inspiration from the past. This is what a photograph that I did for my graduation show. And I was very obsessed with this idea of like someone that was injured. So I made it into a mask. Lately, I've been really curious about milagritos and what that means, what that represents for people. With this one, it's called Trials and Tribulations. The only way I can explain it is I have really bad arthritis. And sometimes it's just hard for me to do a lot of things. And my husband is like, he steps in and helps. It's a constant thing dealing with chronic pain. And I wanted to make my chronic pain visible. Sometimes it's hard for people to see or understand chronic pain because they're like, oh, well, I don't see it. You don't have blood. You don't have this. You don't have that. So I wanted to have something. And, you know, a luchador, you're constantly fighting. You're like in this, like luchando for your life. So this was inspired by that. The same with this, with the person in the photograph, because he was dealing with a lot of things that were coming his way. How the depression and anger and sadness that he felt, I was like, well, let's bring those out to the surface so like people see what you're feeling, the pain, where this is coming from. Like not all pain is visible, but sometimes people need a visible cue to see it. And you see like on the milagritos on the forehead of the luchador mask, you see like a good luck charm, peace dove, and a rainbow above, and a heart there that's being protected by swords. Like keep away, like I'm guarding this luck, this love, this soul. Like where you're guarding your soul, and all the things that are around, like flowers and things to like help you reflect on a moment of what's happening. The photograph in the background is also my mother, and I wanted to. It's important to have layers in your art and in general. Everything is connected. Everything is like swirling down. With that photograph of my mother in the back, I covered one of her eyes and put this like golden halo behind her with these dried flowers that I had brought back from Mexico. It's a constant ebb and flow of inspiration from my past and from the present and what I want to leave for the future. Here's some other examples, like what I showed you with the guy with the bear head. I've been really obsessed with these ideas of these hybrids, and they came from an inspiration of, I would hear people say, oh, you got to hire some Mexicans. You got to get yourself some Mexicans to like, you know, like either work in like construction or anything, like anything that people need help with, and say like, oh, you got to get yourself some Mexicans. Like as if we're just like someone to shop for at the store, as if we're just like these farm animals that you can just pick up. So it was more of a rebellion against that idea of hardworking Mexican immigrants being seen as just cattle to be bought. That has evolved into just like many different types of animals, and almost kind of like embracing it, like, well, yeah, sure, why not? If you think I'm this, I will be that. So this is where this project came in with all the hybrid animals. And again, you see the bruises on the face, and that is more of just like the bruises from life. The one with a half a face, my grandma used to call me Flaco de Oro. I think that's something from her generation. There was a singer that was called that. But she was always talking about like, oh, it is the puro oro. It is the puro oro. It was something that I had to lean back on as an adult, and like to try to find like trying to find that self-worth again. You know, like, oh, I am made out of gold. And everyone is golden inside. So that's where that mask came from. That one's called "It Is the Time I Spend on My Rose That Makes My Rose So Important," and it comes from, the title comes from the book The Little Prince. It's about a little prince that is so in love with his rose, but doesn't think that his rose is so special until he meets other roses out in other gardens. And it's like, you're beautiful, you smell great, but you're not like my rose that I took care of. You're not like the rose that I planted and grew myself and took care of. So I lean back on a lot of things that I learned as a kid, a lot of stories, a lot of reflection on my time in Mexico and in Indiana, and how that all, like, my identity as a Mexican was being questioned, and how, I still tell some people my name is Joel, but it's Joel. That was my Spanish given name. And it was weird when it was kind of like taken away. In a way, like with my artwork, I try to reclaim my Spanish name. Call me by my Spanish name. A lot of this work is very inspired by just growing up with these thoughts of, am I equal to you, or like immigrant issues based with pop culture, with everything. You have to look back at your past to figure out what you want to say. I like to take my art into spaces and try to make that space mine, to have a moment for myself to be able to capture that idea that I wanted to say. Like, for example, this wolf with a sheep's head, it could be seen as like triumphant or violent or ignorant, and depending on who's looking at it. So it was this whole idea of like the sheep taking back its power by killing the wolf. The layer by layer of constructing it is what helps the most, because you just contemplate on how slowly you make it. The slower you make your art, the more you think about it. Because you're like, what am I putting into this? What am I, and you know, like I'm barely molding it. I'm like, it's gonna be this color. I'm gonna say this, and oh no, I don't want to say that anymore. Tear it off, build something different. I used to just post on my Instagram just the masks on their own, and I don't think people understood what I was trying to say. I had to also become a performance artist. You know, if it wasn't for Instagram, for these social media platforms, that I think every art student needs to become their own agent, become their own promoter, become their own everything. And I'm using it for advancing my art. Everything I start out with is plasticine. And I chose to do plasticine because it's so moldable. Like you can just change it into, like, here's a little face I made. You can change it into whatever form you want. And when you're done with it, you can reshape it again. So number one, I save money. But number two, my space is limited. So I have to be able to have resources, renewable resources, to be able to make my art. And I cover it in here's me trying to the whole process. I first had to make a painting to be able to show what my idea was. So I had to make some concept art before getting the green light to start. So my whole idea was based on the song Si Nos Dejan. You know, it's about if they let us, we can try to find a little place in heaven where we can be together, where we can live out on the clouds and be happy. But the whole idea hangs on this concept of si nos deja, like if they let us. So as a gay man, I was like, well, what does that mean? Si nos deja, like who? The government? God? What? Like who's gonna let us be happy? Who's gonna let us live on a cloud? So I got approached this project as in like heaven is here on earth, and I'm in heaven already. After I finished the piece, I cover it in Vaseline. That's the best way to be able to like take things off the mold. I have this avocado. So inside I had the plasticine that I recently took out. Once I have the form that I want, I cover it in Vaseline in trash bags to be able to release the mold out. And then, you know, you let it dry. I fix the edges. I like add some paper clay to like in any weak spots that I may have. But I mean, it's pretty strong. I use red rosin paper. It's all been a trial and error. I used to use paper towels to make masks, and that's not good. Don't ever do that. And don't ever sell it thinking that it's not gonna come back and haunt you, because I've gotten pictures of artwork that from like the very, very beginning where I'm just like, oh man. So these skulls were supposed to represent us at Earth, like dead. So like this is like just like in heaven. Like if we're gonna be together in heaven, like we're gonna be together here on Earth, like forever. here. So, si nos dejan, vamos al cielo, pero si no, vamos a estar aquí, juntos. It's a play on religion, on music, on what does it mean to be queer in America, and where does religion fall into that. So at the very top, it's the two guys inside the cloud, and they're looking at each other. We finally made it all the way up here, but underneath here, like you can see it different ways. Either we were denied or we were allowed. But even if we were denied, we're still gonna be together. In the middle, I have this bird that's eating a worm, and that's supposed to represent the continuation of life. So that's where the reality of this piece is centered around, like this idea of life and how it continues outside of my own consciousness. So here are the skulls that I started painting. Also, for the students that will listen to this later, record everything. Everything is content. We're living in an age where people want to see how it was made. Everyone is showing the process, and every student should. If you want to create an online presence, you can't just show the ending of it. People like seeing what you're making, and it's also good for yourself too, because it's like my own archives. My Instagram is my own archive, and I get to look back on it in this cleaned up manner. I'm like, oh, I need to find inspiration again through my own artwork whenever I'm feeling like I can't find something new to talk about. Maybe I should re-explore this idea that I had. This is all Photoshop. This wasn't on the actual wall. But this is like the whole concept. And that's me with the director of the museum, and who's actually as well from Laredo, Texas.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, so it's very cool. I was very excited to know that he was from Laredo, because I'm like, I'm from there too. So you never know who you bump into out there. Let's see, and here's some other pieces that I wanted to show you how they reflect back on my culture as well. The Mickey Mouse, you see Mickey Mouse a lot in my artwork. When we moved to the US, I was 9. My mom, the way that she tried to convince us was like, oh, we're gonna be closer to Disney World or Disneyland. This like American idea of like, oh my God, Disneyland. I had no idea Indiana was that far from California or Florida. But the whole concept, like what my mom tried to sell me as, and like, yeah, let's move, was like introducing me to this like idea of American dream through pop culture. That never happened until I was a lot older. And when I finally went to Disneyland, it like felt like such a fake idea of what America is actually. But that idea stuck with me, and I use it a lot as in this American promise of reaching your dreams, being like absolutely happy. But I mixed that idea with a mask of La Danza de los Viejitos, which is, like this, like, from what I've read, is like this idea of making fun of old Europeans with pink faces that are like, they can't walk, they're having a hard time. So, I mean, you've seen Danza de los Viejitos, right? Like, so I wanted to take that same concept, but mix it in with this pop culture and these ideas of what America is. When I first moved to the US, I experienced a lot of racism, like some like pretty bad things. And this mask was able to help me kind of put a ugly face on this idea of the American dream. Everything that I make comes with this idea of the American dream / false American dream / being an immigrant, being gay. And it's like a bunch of mixtures of things that I try to stuff into one mask at a time. And the whole concept of, am I wicked? Am I wicked because people say I'm wicked? So I've been going through a phase of just making a bunch of little devils because that's what my like what my grandpa would say, like, ahí vienen los diablitos, about me and my brother, like this idea of like we're just little devils, like little demons that are here to make his life hell. So I like to bring those to life again, this like playful devil. They're also a play on this song that my mom used to sing to me from Angelica Maria, called El Diablito, which is this little kid that wakes up in the middle of the night and there's a devil that crawls out of from underneath the bed and it just starts playing guitar, just dancing around playing guitar. And it's one of the most frightening songs that is a song meant for kids. I'm inspired by that song and just making this like playful devil with this playfulness about, you know, people calling us devils, for not following what they think is morally right. Yeah, so this one was inspired by like the Aztec warriors, but we know with a Lisa Frank hit on top of it.
Yes.
Instead of, you know, like the scary jaguar that they would wear, but it's the whole concept of like just being like putting on a face when you're gay and coming off as like being just like tough in a place that might not accept you. So you have to put on this other like mask, but you can't help. Like no matter how many masks you put on, the gay will still come through. So that's where the Lisa Franks came in, because I was really obsessed with it when I was little. And it's something that I would like hide, you know, like, oh, I don't like Lisa Frank. But now I'm just kind of embracing it and like, yeah, I'll put it on. This is my warrior mask.
Oh, I absolutely love that one. Like I know you had posted, I think it was like a sneak peek of it, and like immediately like I was like, oh my god, that's a Lisa Frank one. This whole like the whole concept with the masks, like I think that like everyone has one. Like I know like I see like I love memes. So there was this one meme and it was alien and she was ironing like her suit of like a woman, and I'm like, that's sometimes how I feel.
We're all constantly putting on different faces, you know. Like so it's a constant back and forth. Like we all have different, within ourselves, we all have different ways of being around different people. It's this cluster of personalities on top of yourself, and sometimes it's hard to navigate which one should I put on. So I'm inventing all these faces in the hopes that maybe someone will connect to it. Maybe someone will see themselves in it, even if it doesn't look like them. I want my artwork to be used as tools for your own reflection, even though I'm presenting it only through my own perspective, my own experiences. I hope I'm able to break that barrier for other people that are looking at my work. I don't want someone to say, oh, I cannot relate to that because that's not my experience. I didn't grow up that way. That's not my intention. I don't want people to feel excluded from my work. I'm just approaching it from my perspective. And when I started focusing on just my perspective, I felt like my work got stronger. I was able to focus internally on my experience, who I am as an artist.
I know that you had mentioned that you were like inspired to use more of like the Mexican symbology. I was going to ask you if you have considered using other materials. Like I know recently I started working with snakeskin, so I embedded some snakeskin within my papers. So if that was something that like you'd be interested in, or like something that you kind of been like thinking about.
I feel like I've finally hit a groove where my artwork comes a lot easier. I used to do a lot of experimenting. The feeling was there, but the craftsmanship was not. So now I've reached a point where I feel like when I approach this process is a lot easier. Right now, I'm pretty comfortable with this groove of artwork that I've made. I feel like I found my niche.
Well, I love your work, like your photography and the way that you photograph your work. Like I feel that even the photographs themselves are like an artwork. Like the one you showed us of the lamb and the wolf. Like I feel like that print itself is like it's like a painting. It's like a piece on its own. So I think it's super amazing, and it's like it brings your work to a whole other level. I know that whenever I started my artistic process, like I also started with photography, and that was my so I kind of like I took a step back from the photography. Just I don't know, and I think now with technology, like I could take a really awesome picture. I feel like with my phone and stuff.
Also, the sudden movement of photography, because I got my degree in photography. I did all that in the studio, and then all of a sudden everyone has a little tool that they can do the same thing, and it like absolutely changed what my future in art was going to be like. What was I gonna do with that? So I had to reinvent if I wanted to continue to make art. And that's one thing I would tell a lot of students, like be like move with the time
Yeah.
if you want to stay relevant. So you have to stay on top of being a business person and being a creative. It's a hard job.
Yes. Yeah.
Being an artist is a hard job because you work really, really hard and you don't get paid what you think you should get paid. So what's the best way? Sell it through yourself. Become your own gallery, become your own museum, become your own art store. It's important to do art shows, and I'm very happy to show at certain art galleries.
So I'm assuming you do have like a very well picture like of every mask you've made, right?
Yeah, I have a big archive of all the artwork I've made. I think I've made and sold at least 300 masks. I've been doing this now seriously for 5 years.
Oh wow.
So it's going well because I love a lot of my artwork. I think they're little treasures, but I think it's important to sell the artwork that you love because that means that someone out there is going to love it too. I hope this is help. I hope this is helping. Like I feel like a lot of the things that I'm saying, I'm also saying to myself as well and listening to my own advice. This has been very helpful, a good conversation for me to be able to dig into my own. It's like therapy.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it felt like therapy, just being able to re-examine what it is that I want to say. I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
My parents brought me to the US with a specific goal of living my dream, and I have to stay true to that goal of being able to live my dream as long as possible through art and being able to help my family through my art.
That's really beautiful though.
Yeah.
Like I love that. Yeah, like I love
Yeah.
that I love the work. I feel like so many people connect to it. I feel that like right now more of like the Hispanic community, like we're able to kind of see ourselves more out there. There's stuff like this that we can connect to. And I feel that it'll help kids just learn more and learn about themselves more and be able to open up. Thank you for doing your awesome work. And I love it.
Thank you. Thank
Same.
you. Thank you. It's been a really nice conversation, and I hope my messages came out clear because the whole main message that I want you to take from this is like heart, puro corazón. That's the only way that you can approach everything in life. Just puro corazón.